Does anyone have many fencing tools? Standard pliers, one lot of fencing pliers. See what Owen's got. So there is another set which is sort of your basic ones with a little cutter on the side as well, which a lot of people use. Totally personal preference for what you prefer. These are good wire cutters, little grip bit in the middle, staple pullers, a hook. Yeah, can do 101 things with them. Standard pliers, they work as well. Just depends on what you're used to and how good you are at twisting wire, etc. When it comes to cutting wire, again, cutting, they now have these basically mini bolt cutters on the market, which are great. Various quality in them as well, so anywhere from 30 to a bit over $100 depending on what you want. But they'll also cut the mesh on gates. They'll cut 4mm steel rod. Other than that, hammer for putting in your staples, etc. Some people are now going, which is very easy, using tech screws to put their insulators on. It's quick and easy, and if you're not very good with a hammer and lining up to hit a nice curved thing and worried about smashing your insulators, go for it. Again, if you come into labour cost, it's a lot quicker to be putting in tech screws in your insulators than it is to be putting staples in and standing there bashing away. Strainers. Do people know how wire strainers work? Yep. So cover that a little bit more when we go and do it. So basically another cam action, clips onto your wire on one side, on the other end clips onto the other side, and as you lever up it clips up the chain, just works its way along and getting closer, hence pulling the two closer together, making your wire tighter. Couple of different versions, your standard ones through to now you can actually get them which have a tension gauge in them as well. So each wire has a different tension rating to what it's to be strained up to, depending on whether it's 1.75 barb, 2mm wire, 2.5 medium, high tensile, whatever. These ones actually have a little 2.2 kilonewtons, 1.8, 1.3, depending on what your wire is. And the further it goes, there's a little spring in here that compresses and this rubber ring gets closer. So that's your guide to how tight to make it. Posts. Threaded pine, steel, black, galvanised, railway iron, up to you depending on what equipment you've got to deal with it and what you want to spend. Do we understand post sizes? So posts these days, depending on the place you go, are sold as greens, reds, blues, blacks and greens. That's a bit confusing with greens on both ends. This one's actually a green or a 65-95, but it's sort of on the maximum of that bundle size. So basically a green 65-95 and then a red is 95-130. So most line posts as you go along your fence will be the reds or 95-130. Your backup posts are normally a blue, which is 130-150, and a strainer you try to go for 150 to 200 mil or bigger, depending on your ground. So what that means, because posts are tapered, your 95 is your smaller end and your 130 is the larger. So the posts generally fit within those parameters when you look at a bundle. But when you're putting posts in, if you're digging the hole by hand, the fat end goes in the ground. If you're driving posts in the ground, the small end goes in the ground. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. So if you're digging a hole, so you dig your hole this big, because that's the width of your shovel. if you put the small end in, it's like jamming a wedge in something. It goes small to bigger, which you're going to pack around it. So it means it can actually lift back out. If you put the big end in and it tapers up, you're packing around it, which means the bigger part has to pull up through what you've packed. When you're driving a post, because then you're doing like that wedge technique, the smaller bit it slowly gets tighter and tighter as it's pushing through the hole. Steel posts. As I said earlier, you get what you pay for. You can go black, you can go galvanised. Totally up to what your budget is, whatever. Right. These are 165 gal posts. These three. Different brands, all galvanised. This one here is the Waratah Geo or Gio, depending on how you wish to say it. Oval holes, they have a bit more of a solid insulator that goes through. They actually, not quite always every second hole, but they have a large, small, large, small, large hole. So the large holes actually line up with all the other posts on the market. So they're both, give you an example, that post is a Waratah one, $7.50, $8, depending on where you go. This is a Metal Corp, cheapest on the market pretty much at the moment, just under $6. Look the same, but when you look on the end, there's a smaller profile on these ones. So if you've got soggier ground, the idea of your post is to have more purchase on the ground to stop it doing this when it gets wet. So again, but if you've got nice rocky ground, you can go the cheaper ones, or you can just put them a bit closer together. There's the options. Not saying they don't work, they don't last. They do work, and they last pretty much as well as these. It just depends on what your ground situation is. And again, you've got the larger, same there. Then you go now to what's available. Maxis, XLs, whichever you wish to call them. So if you don't have a post driver, or you don't feel like digging post holes all everywhere, you can start using these. 1.8 metre post. These ones even come marked for how far you put them in the ground, which is convenient. So not quite the same purchase as a timber post in the ground, but if you don't want to be digging holes, or you don't have equipment to be driving them, it works out a lot cheaper and easier, and a lot quicker too.
The normal post driver fits over them, don't they?
A normal one doesn't quite.
We've got one like that one.
Yep, you got that one, Will.
That'll fit, yeah.
Large one. Yep, that will. Standard line post, $11-ish, and then you've got to dig a hole or drive it. So if you're thinking it's going to take you 20 minutes to half an hour to dig a hole and put one post in, take about a minute to put one of them in. So if you want to equate the labour cost, it's sort of really you're ahead putting those in. Strainer posts, as much as it's annoying if you have to dig them by hand, 2.1 is your minimum. If you put a 1.8 metre post in the ground, it's only in the ground this far. Anything taps it, pressure on the fence, straining it up, it'll start doing this. 2.1 minimum, 2.4 is preferable. Yes, that's a metre in the ground of a minimum. Then, which you won't have any problem with it moving, unless you've got really soggy soils, which then you probably need to put your strainers closer together, just put inline strainers through. So these just work like this, which is great. If it gets stuck on there with that little bit, you can go like this to knock, especially if you hit some clayey soil, and if those little stoppers aren't on the top, you're bashing your fingers together. So they're a great investment. You also don't have to bend over, and you can still have a hole this big, rather than if you're using a shovel and you're getting down to that sort of depth, 800-900 mil depth, your hole sort of ends up about this big, that then you've got to pack it back in and fill up around. Whereas these things, you don't have to bend over so much, and you end up with that smaller hole. Driving posts in. Heaps of different versions of post drivers for tractors, even excavators these days. I'm on a job at the moment, we're using a 20-ton excavator to push the posts in, which is great. Basically, I think we put in almost 40 posts in half an hour the other day. He just walks along beside the fence line, bucket, pushing them in. One person stands them up. Don't know if it quite meets OH&S requirements, but anyway, it works really well.
Sure it does.
So yeah, different setups with post drivers. Some are rear mounted like this, some will actually go out the side of the tractor, so you can drive along the side of your fence and it sits out and put your post in. Again, as I said, access in winter can be awkward if it gets too wet, and in summer you've got the problem you either need to dig your hole a little bit to start with if it's too hard, and point your posts helps as well. Some drivers will also have an auger attachment, so you can actually auger your hole first, say a 100mm hole, and then putting in a 150mm post, so it just spreads that last bit but it can drive through. Putting steel posts in. There's the trusty old hammer, which you can go from a little hammer through to a big sledgehammer. Driving steel posts, as I said, hammer, the old banger. Grab that one. So these are just over, nice and noisy. Hearing protection's great. Various ones of these on the market as well these days.
Awesome.
Petrol powered.
That's great.
Sits over. It basically works like a jackhammer. So in here there's a little anvil and it goes up and down. Yeah, these are ranging these days anywhere from $400 or $500 up to $1,500 for the contractor versions.
So the post drivers are $80.
Yep, these will actually, this one does the big maxi posts as well, and I've got an attachment to put in 80mm steel strainers that works on it as well. That is the other thing. There's the old 3-point linkage post hole auger off the back of the tractor, or there's the handheld ones, 2-stroke, do it, single person, double person, depending on the ground. Works really well. I've got one, works great in some situations where you can't get the tractor to, or if there's only a couple of post holes to do. There's no point taking a tractor to do 2 holes if it's 50k away. That's a long drive in the tractor. Yeah, but again, these ones, you get a good workout with your hands. Make sure you wear eye protection and hearing protection. These ones, they're heavy, they're 15 kilo to lift, but 70-80 posts in an hour easily, as long as you've got them all laid out ready to go. Plain wires, again you've got your same 2.5, pretty much the industry standard now. Standard gal, heavy gal, long life blue, whatever you want to use, up to you. Tie easy or high tensile are the main ones for your main lines. It's a little bit stiffer to work with, but it takes a lot more impact and doesn't seem to stretch as much as your medium tensile. If you're doing long runs, then yeah, medium tensile is fine, because you need to have that little bit of give in it to get through your gullies and hills and everything else. .5mm wire, basically that's now the standard for most things. Some of the older wires you can, and the cheaper ones you can still get are a 2, and a lot of the wires now come, this one is as well, and that one there, they have a 2.8mm top and bottom wire, and a few of them now are coming out with a 2.8 in the centre. So you've got a lot stronger wire in your high impact areas. So, to explain a couple of things, who can tell me what this one, the number on the packaging would be?
Number on the packaging.
Okay, so you got 7 wires, it's 90 centimetres high, and there are 30 centimetre gap. So when you look at a wire and the packaging on the shelf or on the pallet, whatever, and it says 790/30, That's 7, 90, 30. So you've got 7 wires up, 90 centimetres and 30 centimetre gaps. And you can get 8, 90, 30, 6, 70, 30, etc. This one here is an 11, 90, 15. So 11 wires, 90 centimetres, 15 centimetre spacings. And then we've got the one over here, which is also 11, 90, 15, with what they either call an apron or a footer, depending on the brand. Some will call it footer, some will call it apron. So this is what a lot of people are using for their wallaby wire, either that or this one if you've got really hard ground. But for the extra $40 to $50 a roll, go with the apron on it. So the apron normally sits just outside the fence, so you put it on your fence line like this. This is your impact area. They tend not to be able to push under that little bit because that sits down on the ground. If you've got any little dips in that, it'll fill it as well. So you'll notice on these there's a couple of different knots as well. So this is what they're calling square knot, safety T, yeah, a few different brands. They all have their different name for basically the exact same knot. You can buy hinge joint. If you like buying TASLotto tickets, buy a hinge joint. You'll have as much luck as keeping it upright as winning TASLotto. This one here is called fixed knot or farm knot, some people call it. It's a very high impact, really resistant knot to any slipping. Yeah, a bit more expensive to buy, but if you've got a really high impact area, like if you've got a forestry situation or something like that, or even a laneway where you'd be moving lambs, calves, etc., where they'll push on the fence a lot, it is a good system, and it's a fairly smooth knot as well, so nothing sticking out on it. If you want to keep rabbits out, this doesn't work. You basically have to go to a netting, chicken wire, rabbit wire. Comes in various heights, 30 centimetres, 60 centimetres, 90, 105, 1.8. You can do a similar thing with this as you can with the wallaby wire. Put it on your fence and leave a little apron out the bottom. You need one wire really close to the ground so you can clip it to it, and then at least 3 other wires to hold this to support it all, because it tends to be a little bit floppy and you can't strain it up like you can your normal wire. Who knows how to do any wire knots or how to join their wire? Okay, what style?
With a gripple gun.
With a gripple? Yep. The old fashioned way, figure of 8. So we'll take high strain on your fence. You've got to have enough to overlap, a little bit fiddly. If you've got new wires where you're running out and one roll finishes, etc., then easy enough to do. There's several different ways of knots. That's one of the easiest ones without going to get too complicated. The other ways are these little crimps that are available now. Basically using like a swaging tool, crimps your wires together. The wire will break before this lets go. These will hold about 400 kilos and then let go. If a fire goes through, they'll let go. 220 to 250 each. 45 cents each. Maybe a cut or two on your fingers. They're your options there. But I'll show you how these. Does everyone know how a gripple works? Okay. So with a gripple, there's 2 holes in it, and it has a little cam system inside which locks the gripple on the wire from returning that way. So it can keep on going along the wire that way, and then you put your other end into the other hole and you're left with it locked there. Then there's a little tool, various designs and that are made these days. These lock on, again works a little cam system, and you just do that and it tightens up your wire. there's a little tool. These days, which is convenient, they're actually releasable. So you just stick this little pin in the hole and they come back off the wire. Very good if you're doing a temporary fence. A lot of farmers have their temporary 10-year fence. I'll get to fix it one day or replace it. It's there for 5 years, 10 years, etc. These little ones, that's it. So 220, 250. These little ones, about 45 cents. Just slip your wire into the hole on either side. Crimp your way all the way along the wire, and you're left with a small thing that's no end. You can trim these ends right back, they don't stick out. So if you think about it, using gripples on 790, 890, 30, something like that, not such a big deal. Those rolls of wire come in 200 metre rolls, which is nice. Wallaby wire, 1190, 15, comes in 100 metre rolls, and you've got 11 wires, and then you chuck the footer on and you've got another 4 wires there to join up. So when you start going 15 wires that you have to join for every 100 metres, you're going to be adding around $32, $35 basically by the time you join it up. Yeah, and every time you tighten it a little bit, you get to a knot, you've got to trim that next one off, etc., and go work your way along. These ones, what, $6? So, not even 3 gripples. So, cheaper way to do it. Tools though, you can buy a starter pack for your gripples. I'm not sure on the price, but these are around about $100 for this tool for doing the gripples. These ones for doing the crimps, the basic one starts at about $70, $80 through to the contractor one, which is about $200.
How many kilos that can support?
This,
Roughly.
as much as the wire will. The wire will snap before this will snap.
Okay.
So I've strained up where one of these has been in, and it's actually broken the wire further along. So just to see how good they work. The other real advantage of this is, as you can see, is what, centimetre there. You only need that overlap. You only need to be as long as that is. So not quite 2 centimetres long. That's all the overlap you need to have in your wire if it breaks. If you have a tree come down over your fence, or some lovely person decides to cut your fence to access the property or something, if you've got a nicely strained fence before that incident, it's hard to get 3-4 centimetres each side of the gripple, which you need if you're going to be using one of the gripple tools to strain it. Whereas these, you only need, as I said, 2 centimetres and you're sorted. Basically hook one back on itself. Certainly a lot easier when they're not attached to a fence. So that's the one wire coming in from your left or your right, whichever way you want to be. So this other wire comes under and over, and you push it through, and then it goes back under again. These ones you can, if you can take the strain back off the fence, you can release these back out as well. And pretty much piece it together. So yeah, some extra pieces of wire here if anyone wants to have a practice doing that one. I'll trim them.